Hello and welcome to the first episode of a new podcast called LSAT Logic Applied. I'm your host, Andrew Leahy, an assistant teaching professor of law at Drexel Klein School of Law. This is a short-form podcast where I take the tools from LSAT logical reasoning, assumptions, flaws, causation, strengthening, and weakening arguments, and apply them to real-world claims in the news, politics, and advertising. For those that don't know, the LSAT is the law school admission test, a standardized exam designed to assess logical reasoning, analytical thinking, and reading comprehension for law school applicants. It's a high-stakes test with a unique focus on how arguments work and how they fall apart. The LSAT is owned and administered by the Law School Admission Council, or LSAC. I don't claim any affiliation or ownership there. I'm just here to teach the logic. And on that, you don't need to be studying for the LSAT to follow along. The point here is to learn how to spot weak reasoning in everyday life, the same kind of reasoning that LSAT trains you to attack under time pressure. Today's episode is a clean example of a causal claim, which is one of the most common and most abused argument types of the LSAT. Today's claim comes from President Donald Trump, who has said more than once that tariffs made the United States the richest nation in the world. Now, the statement was examined by factcheck.org, which challenged the accuracy of that claim based on economic data and historical context. But for LSAT purposes, we don't need to resolve the economics. We just need to look at the logic of the argument being made. Here's the breakdown of the claim. Let's strip this down LSAT style. The conclusion is tariffs caused the U.S. to become the richest country in the world. The implied premises are the U.S. is currently very wealthy, tariffs were implemented during the relevant time period, and the increase in wealth followed the tariffs. So the reasoning goes, tariffs happened, therefore wealth increased, therefore tariffs caused the wealth increase. And that's it. That's the whole argument. Now, if you've spent any time with the LSAT, your alarm bells should be already ringing. This is a textbook causal reasoning flaw. The argument assumes that because two things happened in sequence, one caused the other. That's correlation dressed up as causation without doing any of the work to prove it. The LSAT would ding this for failing to rule out alternative explanations. Specifically, the argument doesn't show that tariffs were the primary cause of the wealth increase, that no other economic forces were at play, or that the wealth wouldn't have increased without tariffs. In LSAT terms, the conclusion goes well beyond what the premises actually support. It feels like an argument, but it's mostly implication and assumption. So what's missing? How can we boost or bust the argument? This is where LSAT questions really live, in the evidence that could strengthen or weaken the causal link. To strengthen the claim, you'd want evidence like no other major economic policies or external factors could explain the wealth increase, data showing a direct, consistent link between tariffs and economic growth, not just coincidence. To weaken it, you could show that the economic growth started before the tariffs, that growth happened despite the tariffs or in sectors totally unaffected by them, or that other countries with no tariffs saw similar gains. On the LSAT, this would fit neatly into a weaken question. Which of the following, if true, most undermines the argument that tariffs caused the U.S. to become the richest country in the world? And the right answer would introduce a credible alternative cause. And that's the danger of causal claims. They sound intuitive, even inevitable, but they often rely on assumptions that are never made explicit. The LSAT teaches you to pause and ask, what's actually been proven here? What's just been assumed? And what kind of evidence would actually change my mind? If you start applying that kind of thinking to political rhetoric, news stories, corporate ads, and everything else, you'll start to see weak arguments everywhere. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. And that's it for this episode of LSAT Logic Applied. I told you it would be brief. If you like the breakdown, there's more coming. Same logical tools, new real-world claims. Thanks for listening.